The question is, who is on your team? Team is an acronym for time, energy, attention, and money. Now, we've covered the first three: how you invest your time, how you spend your energy, and most importantly, what are you paying attention to on previous podcast episodes. But today, we're going to really focus in on money. And more importantly, what is your relationship with money? Let's dive into that on today's episode of the Banking on Digital Growth podcast.
You're listening to the Banking on Digital Growth podcast.
Welcome back to the Banking on Digital Growth podcast. I'm James Arbert Lay, founder and CEO of the Digital Growth Institute, where we are on a mission to help financial brands stop losing loans and deposits by guiding them through the Banking on Digital Growth program. And on today's episode, we're going to explore a conversation that impacts everyone, especially those listening to this podcast, because we do deal in the world of money. And more importantly, there's an opportunity to help people uncover and perhaps examine and reframe the relationship that they have with their money. And that's because 85% of people in the United States, money makes them feel stressed. Financial matters make them feel stressed, which is taking a toll on their health and their relationships and their overall sense of well-being. But before we get into today's discussion on the relationships that each one of us have around money, I want to invite those who work at a financial brand, at a bank, at a credit union, at a fintech, to join the digital growth community. We have over 300 members who are committed to connecting, learning, and growing together. It takes less than 60 seconds to join. You can go to www.digitalgrowth.com/membership, and I look forward to seeing you inside. Now, joining me for today's conversation as we explore kind of a taboo subject, the relationships that we each have with money, is our operations lead here at the Digital Growth Institute, Audrey Cannata. Audrey, welcome to the show. Good to have a conversation with you on such, I would say, a sensitive subject today.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here.
And this is completely unscripted. I have no idea where this is going to go. Audrey has no idea where this is going to go. We're going to just let this conversation unfold as it should. Because when we think about who is on your team, how we invest our time, how we spend our energy, what are we paying attention to, all of that is going to impact and help us answer the question, what is the relationship that we have with our money? But before we get there, Audrey, always start on a positive note. What is good in your world right now, personally or professionally? It is your pick to get started.
Yeah, so I had a really fun opportunity last week to join a podcast. So a friend of mine and the owner of my gym, F45, he is also a financial advisor and has his own podcast. And he asked me if I wanted to join his show and talk about a topic that is pretty relevant to me, which is gaining financial independence post-divorce or separation. That's something that I have been working through over the last several years. It's an important topic. I think it's one that many, men and women, but, in my case, females face. It's that challenge of getting back on your feet and not just becoming financially independent, but really, finding that empowerment to make your finances work for you in a time where you might be feeling a little bit defeated.
Yes. And that's why today's conversation, I think, is so important that we at least begin to have. And maybe we'll come back and we'll continue this conversation, because when we look at the research, 85% of people in the United States are struggling with financial stress or financial anxiety. And there is a difference through the discussion that we had with Dr. Megan McCoy. Reports coming out of stash.com that 1 out of 3 people are losing sleep because of financial stress. We look at, money matters and the impact that that takes on relationships, whether that be between couples or even between the parent child dynamic. And all of that is going to directly influence how we spend our time or how we invest our time, how we spend our energy, and also influence what we even pay attention to, which will then come back to what is our relationship with money. And there's such a taboo on this subject. Um, and you know me. I mean, you've known me for over a decade now.
Oh yeah.
12, I'm trying to
12,
think.
13, let's see, 2010. We met in 2010.
14 years.
Yeah.
Um, and when you think about money, I mean, what comes up for you with that word? And we're gonna just let this thing unfold and tie this back into some conversations too that we've had with leaders within the vertical, within the industry on the subject.
For me, and you touched on this in your introduction, is that financial stress versus financial anxiety, losing sleep. There was a time not too long ago where I suffered extreme anxiety over money. It wasn't that I was struggling to put food on the table, but I was struggling with my future. What the long term looked like, how I was going to get into a place where I felt not just comfortable, but like, setting myself up for success. It felt like, oh my gosh, this mountain that I have to climb is so high. I don't even know what to do, where to begin. And that does cause a lot of anxiety. Especially when you're thinking about, for me, it's like, wow, I'm in my, mid, actually I'm creeping up to my late 30s now, with two kids. And I didn't expect to be in the position that I am today at my age. But I am. And so having to overcome a lot of that alone, like kind of that stigma of or like the comparison culture, left me with a lot of anxiety.
Yeah. I think for me, if I'm being 100% honest with myself, I struggle with financial anxiety. And I don't know why. And I've been working on this. I've been trying to answer this question for probably a good 3 or 4 years at this point, because it's more of a mental thing than
Yeah.
anything. It's almost,
Yeah.
and you think about what I shared with banking on change, how influential the mind and the stories that we tell ourselves
That's what it is.
will then directly influence our beliefs going forward. And that idea, the belief about money, I mean, we're, if you think about your belief with money, what informed your beliefs? What informed your money financial beliefs the most, the greatest, looking back?
Probably my family, my parents. Watching them. I mean, my my mom was a stay-at-home mom most of our life. So just my dad was the sole income provider. And, I remember we were very frugal. It was off brand. I mean, we still kind of, my brothers and I joke, like we never had name brand anything, not even food. It's always the off brand. And so we were just kind of used to not being able to afford certain things and
Sure.
not being, having the nicest clothes. And so I guess maybe, and I think, I know at least one of my brothers feels the same because we've had this conversation. We found ourselves kind of later in life almost overcompensating for that, almost like needing more and wanting more. And like once we started making our own money, it's like we wanted to get all the things that we never felt we got as a child, even though in looking back, I'm so glad I didn't have all those things because I think that's part of what made me who I am today. But we had to realize, whoa, 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 why are you getting all those nice things? Why are you buying this? Why are you trying to get that car? Is it because you felt like that was missing for a while? And I think we've both kind of been working on that moving forward.
So it's interesting that you and your brother are taking this journey together here, and how much the family of origin will influence the beliefs, and how much belief will then go on to influence behavior. And this is one of the big reasons I am advocating for. And we just probably should mark this episode just for future reference for you and I that we can come back to. I predict that we will end up integrating financial coaching into our Banking on Digital Growth program. It will be part of our step 3, where we're helping financial brands build a digital growth engine. Because if you think about some of the recent workshops that we've even done, how we're surfacing the power of belief with the influence of behavior, particularly at a leadership level within these organizations. And if leaders aren't aware, first and foremost, that there's such a strong connection between belief and behavior, then we're going to continue to do the same exact thing. I was just recently speaking at a conference and had someone come up to me afterwards, and they shared, because we were talking about banking on change as part of my keynote. They said, I want to have a conversation with you because we've been doing all of this financial literacy, all this financial education stuff for over a decade. But what you're tapping into is really human transformation here.
Yeah.
If you think about the
Yeah.
idea of human transformation, starting internally within an organization, even deeper, it starts with the self, then the team, then the organization, then that can spill over into the lives of account holders. I mean, how do you think it feels? And there's probably a bit of projection here, so we just have to be mindful of that. But we've even seen it though, so I say it's more anecdotal than projection. Even it's anecdotal. You work at a financial brand, and 85% of people in the US are struggling with financial stress or financial anxiety. You work at a
Yeah.
financial brand, that could create imposter syndrome, right?
100%.
So we had a conversation with a group of leaders in Zoom
Mm-hmm.
that were going through our Digital Growth University. And this was it was almost like a conversation like this, just completely off the cuff. And I don't know what inspired me to like just go here, but I said, you know what? Let's do this. If y'all are all open to this, why don't we just unpack some of our money narrative?
Mm-hmm.
And everyone went to one-on-one breakouts. And I remember who I was teamed up with. And this individual was in his 40s,
Mm-hmm.
similar situation as what you're talking about. And the burden that he felt, the weight that he
Yeah.
felt, the pain that he felt, the shame even that he felt. And all I did was just simply give him space just to listen.
Yeah.
And I didn't judge him on anything. I mean, recall that experience.
Gosh, I do remember that. And it was certainly not planned. And it was, well received. I think for money, I think this probably just goes to prove how much people are really suffering from, financial stress or anxiety inside, because it did not take a lot for this group to share. It was almost like give them the green light and they were like, oh, here you go. This is what I've been dealing with. And so when people do that, you can tell that it is near the surface. It
Yeah.
is there. You did not have to go pulling teeth to get this information out. But it was like once they shared it and they realized that, oh my, there's 4, 5, 6 other financial brand leaders in this room who all had somewhat of a story to tell around money. It was like this sense of relief, and I'm not alone, and I'm not crazy. I'm not the weirdo who's, working at a bank who can't get their finance. Well, I don't want to say they can't get their finances in order, but something has gone on. There's some situation, why they're struggling, or reasons why they're struggling, and that it's okay, and it doesn't make you good, bad. Right, wrong, it is what it is. And we're all kind of dealing with some situation on our own. I think there's, there's just nothing more relieving than knowing that you're not alone.
Yeah. And I want to come back to, you had shared what influenced your belief system around money. And this is what I'm working for myself to like examine and then reframe, because I do not want my belief system today to negatively impact or influence my kids.
Yeah, that's
And
hard.
it is, but I think it's like, if you're going to do the hard work, do the hard work. I mean, do hard things is, be disciplined to do difficult things. That's my theme for the year.
Yeah,
And my relationship, same thing, family of origin, but more specifically, the words "we can't afford it" are seared into my mind. And that, I've actually found that does two things. One, it, you know what? Screw you. I can do whatever I want kind of a thing. And it creates that, like, almost that teenage, immature, I'm going to go and do whatever I want whenever I want. Like,
yeah,
regardless, because it's almost acting out in the opposite of what I grew up hearing. Similar situation, I don't know why. It's like, as a kid at
the
school,
rebellion.
yeah, well, like kids, Tommy Hilfiger was a thing back in the mid
Oh
90s.
yeah.
Like, that was the brand back then.
I had one shirt and I like saved, I'll never forget it. I can still visualize what it looks like. My Tommy Hilfiger shirt. My brother worked at the outlet store. So I got a discount and it was, probably still $25, but I used my own money at like 15 years old
Well, I mean, yeah, but
just to get it.
and that was the thing. Like, I never had that.
Yeah.
And it was in hindsight, in retrospect, not a big deal. But
No.
as a developing teen, and
Yeah.
now, because this was mid 90s, like I can't even begin to imagine when you put in the social pressure of social media.
Yep.
Oh my goodness. Like, that's
Yeah.
gotta be so challenging now for teens today. Now
It
I
is.
sound
And,
like an old
and I
man.
think, we've had this conversation about our parents saying things, we can't afford it. And I have tried to, because for me, I feel like I want my kids to feel safe and secure.
Yes.
You're not, money isn't, we're going to have a place to live. You're going to have plenty of food to eat. You're going to have clothes on your body. You don't have to worry. So by saying we can't afford it, I think might put a little bit of insecurity in the minds of especially the younger ones. Oh my gosh, like, are we going to be okay? Like, are we poor? But reframing it as, that's not a priority. This is not a priority for us. These are our priorities. I mean, I had to have this conversation with my kids who this were just begging for a trip to Disney, begging. And we talked about it. Look, do you want these toys? Or do you want to save some money for this experience? So I think reframing it from we can't afford it to this isn't a priority.
Something too has come to my light, just digging in with a recent conversation with my mom. And it's not just my family of origin, it's also her family of origin.
Yeah.
And see, now you're getting to a multi-generational narrative of how her parents and even her parents' parents and their beliefs are influencing my own thoughts today. Right, wrong,
Yeah.
good or bad. Like we have to just look at this very objectively. We have to look at this very stoically. It's just data, because a recent conversation with her that transpired, I got new data that I'm trying to figure out what to do with. And a lot of it was, she had moved around when she was young and ended up moving back into East Texas. But when they moved back, they ended up living Like her mom and dad, they had 4 kids. And her mom and dad ended up living with her grandmother, so my great
Mm.
grandmother. But the
Oh,
house was so small. I remember going there like his 4 or 5, his tiny little house, built up on blocks, cinder blocks.
mhm.
But my mom told me that she was maybe 7 years old or so, and her sister slept on the front porch.
Wow.
They put a screen up on the front porch, but they slept on the front porch. And I'm like, I had no idea.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you go back to the previous generation before that, and then you're getting into the Great Depression.
Yep.
And that's when her parents were raised. And so it's almost like, that's we're 100 years past that period of time, more or less.
Yeah.
And those experiences of how much they're trickling down, because on one side of the spectrum, once again, when the we can't afford it, it'll act out, and I go make dumb financial choices, short-term pleasure as opposed to the long-term gain.
Mm-hmm.
But then the other side, fear and scarcity. And I think
Mine. Protect.
exactly. So you start to like pull in and pull
Yep.
within instead
Yeah.
of being courageous and continuously pushing outward. People are
Yeah.
like, is this you? Yeah, these see this all transformation that leads to future growth starts by telling the truth. And
Yeah. You want to hold on to it.
this is what drives a lot of James Robert Lay, like behavior. But I think the point is of this conversation, for me, for you, for anyone watching, for anyone listening, it doesn't have to be that way. Like we get to write a new script. We get to, because our mind is a movie theater. We can
Yeah.
write a new script, produce a new film, direct it, and star in it anytime we want. And that's what I'm working to do myself. What about you? I mean, if you think about just continuously your financial transformation here, what's
I think
influencing your transformation?
I think a lot of it has to do with my personal growth and really recognizing what my priorities are and like what is important to me. What do I really want to focus on? And not getting caught up in just that frivolous spending. I think prior to where I am now, which is, single mom with 2 kids, before that, I spent money like it was not a big deal. And it was more so of that being able to showcase how well we were doing and how successful I was on the outside. And that drove a lot of my financial choices. And I can admit that 100%. But I've really shifted that a lot now. I mean, I really look, if my car is comfortable and it drives and it gets me from point A to point B, great. It's not a priority. I don't care, necessarily what it looks like on the outside anymore. I don't need a bigger house. I just want to own a home. I don't need it to be huge. I just want it to be under my name and not paying rent anymore. I want my kids to be happy. So I think the more I've gotten confident and secure in who I am and what I want in life, I don't need to use money as a shield anymore
Ah,
or as a way to show off.
mm.
Those things are just not important to me. It's now more so how can I use money to further my family, to have better experiences, to have a more it's more about like a comfortable life, and a memorable life. It doesn't need to be, all extra.
Well, I think that idea of using money as a shield, or even more deeper than that, a mask,
Hmm.
like using money to mask problems,
Yeah, 100%.
because that was me back in 2012. Like financially doing very well, internally an absolute mess.
Yeah.
To the point to when Delina was like, it's the family or the business. You got to go figure your life out. And I think, that if we think about behavior, it's like, what is driving us? I think for me, like going down the path of entrepreneurship at the age of 20, like I started the business to impress a chick. I mean, think like I've never really thought about that before until just now.
Well, gotta have motivation somewhere.
Well, yeah, but then it's like, so, Dilly and I, we end up getting married, we have kids, and my behavior, though, my drive for this quote unquote financial success has probably more so than not been seeking external validation
Yeah.
up until recently.
Yeah.
And that even goes all the way back to, like, we'll call them the Tommy Hilfiger middle school years,
Yep.
playing sports, even, playing basketball, and being being told my 8th grade year, son, you're never gonna play varsity ball. And I was like, let me tell you something, I am. And I played, and I was captain, and I got a couple of offers for scholarships. Chose not to play in college, but first one in the gym, last one out. Like that
Wow.
insane dedication then translated into my entrepreneurial life,
Yeah.
which is great in the early years. But then when you start, you get married, you start having kids. I mean, even just recently, like the kids were like, Dad, you've been working from home a little too much. And I'm like, yes, we just launched the book. It's circumstantial, but I'm grateful for the dialogue back and forth with them. So, I mean, if you think about like that idea of drive,
It has, yeah.
creating some
It
awareness
really,
there.
yeah. I mean, it really has to be intrinsic and it has to come within because if it is something external,
Mm,
you're going to hit it. And then it's going to be like, well, now what? Okay. Like your motivation was to impress a girl. Well, you got the girl. Okay. So now what? If your motivation isn't yourself, or something on the inside, it's going to run out. I didn't have these like major career goals for, in my 20s at all, not even in my early 30s.
mm.
But being separated and then having just a single income, no child support, single income, feeling the pain of that, it was like, you know what? I never want to feel like this again. I don't want my children I don't want to rely on anybody else's income ever again in my life. And that is what drives me every single day is I don't want my kids, I want to be able to give my kids everything they need and not nobody else. It's not because I want to impress anybody. I don't want my resume to look better. I don't need accolades. It's just for me, that's my drive. And it literally is what wakes me up every single day.
You know, that idea of intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation when it comes to our own financial narrative is one I'm curious how many of those who are watching or listening have really ever given that any consideration before.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes we just get into the rut, the routine, the rote life, and we don't pause, we don't ponder, we don't question, and then before you know it, life is gone. And now for me, like I'm reframing the idea of wealth through 5 different dimensions. Because
Yeah.
before, wealth to me, it was 100% dollars and cents.
Mm-hmm.
And now there are 5 dimensions of wealth and well-being, and they're all interconnected. First, there's spiritual wealth. Then there is your mental wealth, your physical wealth, your relational wealth, and then your financial wealth. And they're all interconnected. Like, and so if you're over indexing on one, then you're most likely going to be suffering and struggling. You won't be
Yeah.
as healthy as you could be in the other. And
Mm-hmm.
you brought up something here with your kids. Um, you want them to feel safe. That's another area, I would say, for exploration around the relationship with money, because there in psychology, there's attachment theory, and that could be in a relationship with a couple, that could be in a relationship with money. And so you've got secure attachment, anxious or preoccupied attachment,
Yeah.
avoidant attachment, and then avoidant, fearful, disorganized attachment. And so the idea of secure attachment, and I'm quoting from a website right here, psychology website, adults with a secure money attachment style are more able to feel comfortable with money, are more able to feel comfortable with the money they have. They often have the confidence knowing that they're capable of managing challenging financial situations. They're also more likely to have a balance between what they spend and what they save. And then on the kind of comparison, the anxious attachment. Adults with an anxious attachment are hyper aware of the situation they are in with money. This can be a great habit to help them reach financial goals, but their lack of confidence in themselves can create a formidable obstacle they must first overcome. It can also lead to challenges regarding their spending, giving, and saving. And then there's the avoidant attachment. Adults with avoidant dismissive attachment tend to close themselves off to financial opportunities that may benefit them as they deal with an overconfidence in themselves to scrape their finances together alone.
Interesting.
And so, if we're thinking about this through the context of financial well being, this is the narrative that I really want to see integrated into a financial brand's positioning, into their content, into their curriculum, into their coaching, into their community, because so much of the financial education, the financial literacy has been just dollars and cents.
Yeah.
I don't see this
Yeah.
behavior based component
Yeah.
here. Am I missing something?
No, I mean, and that's what, and we talked about, financial coaching and my experience before on with the financial gym, but you're right. And I was even talking to Mint, the financial advisor, about this last week on the podcast, and he was advocating for coaching as well. I mean, that's coming from a financial advisor saying that, because we don't surface so much of these emotive, things, elements behind money. Look, I'm intelligent, but I still found myself with some really unhealthy habits and behaviors, not because I didn't know any better. I knew exactly pretty much. I mean, I knew what I needed to do, but it was surfacing. Why am I not getting there? Why am I not doing these things? And it was a lot of the, issues that I just talked about. It was me using money to increase my confidence because I wasn't feeling as secure in myself and who I am. So I was using money as kind of a shield and a way to make me feel better. It was some instant gratification, dopamine hits that were really, really taking away from my long-term goals. So I had to work on that first. I had to work on how I am, who I'm feeling, what I'm capable of, building that confidence, surfacing those habits before I could make these long-term moves with that education that I was getting.
Well, I mean, thinking about that education, thinking about that experience, where do you see, as we start to wrap up, the big opportunities to, I would say, and my thinking is really transformed on this over the last 18 months because I was like, yeah, financial coaching that needs to be integrated into a financial brand's experience. I don't I don't think that's going to be completely possible until they address the situation first and foremost internally
Yeah.
with their team.
I think going back to the conversation that we had with the group on Zoom and just being honest and transparent and sharing your money story, your money journey, I think if we encourage and foster, this environment where people feel safe to do that first and foremost as a small group and then maybe a larger organization and start to celebrate those journeys and the progress that they're making and then use that to showcase those internal stories with those your account holders and those in your community. That is how you're going to show true empathy. Look, I'm an employee at this bank or this credit union. This is my story. This is what I've been through. This is how I know how you're feeling right now. I've been there. Let me help you get to the place that I'm at. Or better yet, let's work through this together.
I mean, you're digging back into banking on change methodology. It's this idea of connection, collaboration, community, and it's a journey that it's very. And I think that's the maybe that's the root of all of this. Is if 85% of people in the United States are struggling with financial stress and financial anxiety, how many of them think that they're alone? Yeah, they philosophically know that there are other people in their situation, but they don't have anyone to just talk with, to gain some perspective from. And this is the whole point of what Megan McCoy is doing with the Financial Therapy Association.
Mhm. Yeah.
Bringing that type of thinking as part of the experience, there's
Yeah.
no better way to put the transformation of people over the commoditized transactions of dollars and cents.
Yeah. I remember the very first day when I met my financial coach, and I was nervous, and I did not want to show, my situation. And he said, "Oh, I've been way worse than you are. I have been way more behind." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, like that's wow." And then as I'm starting to share my goals, thinking they're so hard to reach, he's like, "Oh, not a problem. We're going to get you there." I mean, just made me feel like, wow, like someone has not only been there before, but they're actually making me feel that my goals aren't just far fetched, but I can actually do them. That 20-minute conversation alone did wonders for me mentally.
But if you think about this here, if you're sick, where do you go?
Doctor.
Go to the doctor. Doctor diagnoses you.
Mhm.
A lot of times you're not as bad as you think you are because you ended up Googling what your symptoms were ahead of time.
Sure. You're not dying after all.
Yeah. So the doctor puts your mind at ease, gives you a plan, gives you a prescription, treatment plan.
Hmm.
If
Go
you
for a checkup.
Yeah, and then you follow up with the checkup. If you want to get physically healthy, what do you do? Where do you go?
Jim.
Go to the gym. And yeah, you could go to the gym and do it by yourself and get the standard membership. But if you're really wanting to make progress and faster transformation, either A, you get the private trainer. That's not for everyone. In fact, I would say that there's an even better way, and it's what you're experiencing through F45. And that's one of the reasons I do believe we're seeing these niche brands pop up, whether it's F45, Orange Theory, CrossFit. There's a communal aspect here. And you're
Yeah.
on this path. I mean, think about the community of people
Mhm.
and how important that is
It's
within just your
huge.
own physical health journey.
I mean, it's major. And that's one of the reasons I mean, I love F45 and I love just the format and everything about it. But the reason I stay where I'm at my particular gym, because they're franchises and it's the community, it's the people there, the relationships built. I mean, I can't miss 2 days without somebody texting me, "Hey, where you been? Haven't seen you in a while." Or, "Hey, I'm changing my class. I'm gonna go to this one. You want to join me?" I mean, that alone, and it's hard to put into words just how important that is and how helpful it's been and how meaningful and fulfilling it is too at the same time.
You know, this is just we're starting to have these conversations. I think more we've had these discussions, you and I, behind the scenes.
Mhm.
It was our first time to really like start bringing some of this to the forefront here. And it is to help, first and foremost, for those who are watching and listening, just begin to see things from a different perspective. Because when you see things differently, you're going to think differently. And when you think differently, be careful. you're not gonna immediately act different. To see different, to think different, the next step in the 4 steps of human transformation is you're gonna have to feel different. And perhaps there is an opportunity within your organization to begin to facilitate some of these discussions, dialogues internally first and foremost. Because this is where EX plus HX can be multiplied by DX that leads to growth, meaning a positive employee experience will lead to a positive human experience that can be then multiplied in some cases exponentially multiplied by a positive digital experience. But it all starts with the employee experience. So there's an employee experience opportunity right here. As we wrap up, Audrey, two final questions. First, what has this experience been like for you, just to unpack some of this, talk through some of this, and really just gain some perspective? If you learned anything new, thought anything new.
I appreciated the question about what shaped my beliefs and my money and how much of my childhood did affect that. And not in this like tremendous negative way. But it was really interesting when I finally started to surface like, okay, maybe this is why I'm in my early 20s and late 20s, why my attention and my money priorities were going places that just were not important, and realizing that's why, because I was trying to overcompensate from things that I felt like I was lacking growing up.
True.
But just kind of thinking about, what are some things that you may not have really subconsciously are affecting you, and your decisions that you're making today, based on the way you grew up.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Maybe just getting curious here, for a little bit. What's something that, to take this discussion further and farther within an organization, within a team, even for that matter, within yourself. I mean, let's distill this down. First principles. What's something that someone who's watching or listening can do next?
I think it would be a good place to start to maybe, obviously as an individual, but as a team, share your money goals, share your financial goals. What are you working towards? What are you looking forward to? I'm not saying like how we had that really, amazing, transparent Zoom call where everyone kind of shared their story. You don't have to do that with your organization or your team. I mean, I think over time, would that be an interesting conversation to have once you've built a little bit, level of trust and safety,
Yes,
amongst your group. But I think, James Robert, what my financial goals are. And it helps to talk about it. And then we talked about what are some roadblocks that are getting me there, and it's keeping me accountable, and it's helping to get a little bit more like open and honest about money instead of so, like you said, taboo and secretive. I mean, it's kind of all out in the open, which I think it's fine. And it feels good to have more people to talk to about it.
absolutely. So next step, go and have that conversation. Just be curious and just look at things very objectively. It is what it is. And you always have the ability to write a new script, write a new story,
Never too late.
write a new narrative. Exactly.
Yeah.
Audrey, this has been such a good conversation today. Thank you for going into, a place that, might be a little bit uncomfortable. But that's just how we all get better together. And in fact, it was Joseph Campbell said, the treasure you seek is in the cave you fear to enter. So this is good.
Yeah. I can say it's not uncomfortable hardly at all anymore. I think it was a year ago. It was terrifying a year ago, but because, you've, fostered a place to have these conversations, the more I do, the more I'm like, okay, ask me what you want to ask. I'll tell you everything. This is where I'm at.
That's right. Well, I appreciate it. And thank you so much for tuning in, for watching, for listening. As always, and until next time, y'all be well, do good, and be the light. We'll see you soon.